If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Lindsey Scharmyn. First, our friend Cory Hughes needs help. His dog and best friend Hazel is sick again. 6 months ago, she had to have a minor surgery for a uterus infection, and she was great for 6 months. Then a few days ago, she stopped eating, and Cory noticed she had jaundice. He brought her to the vet. Unfortunately, she requires an emergency room visit with expensive testing just to find out what's going on with her. So I am putting aside our film fundraiser to help raise money to save Hazel. She is like family to me as well, and I don't want to lose her. If you'd like to make a donation, we have links right in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated. If you can't make a donation, please send prayers and healing energy. Forbidden Knowledge News is back on YouTube. We got our big channel back. We will be posting there again. There's links right in the description. Be sure to check out my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi. We are booking guests for December. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Lindsey Scharmyn. She is host of Rogue Ways podcast, author of several books, educator, and national board-certified teacher with a master's in teaching. She is also a spiritualist and experiencer of other realms via astral travel, dream-walking visions, and interactions with other dimensional entities. Lindsey, welcome back. How you doing?
Super good. Always good to be here with you, Chris.
Always great to have you. Looking forward to today. I wanted to get your insights first into the state of collective consciousness as it relates to reactions to recent high-impact events and the rapid technological changes that we're facing, how to navigate some of the madness in our realm, and we'll also learn more about some of your healing modalities. You're also doing a sound healing and money class, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. Before we get into any of that, it's been a little while. Remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Yeah, thank you. I am Lindsey Scharmyn. I'm a spiritual teacher and healer. Teacher, you just smash them together. It's one word now. And so I also have a show, Rogue Soul. Everybody can find my books that I've channeled, the books that are a fictional trilogy, the orgone that I make, the classes that I teach, the one-on-one services that I do at roguesoul.org. Everything is there.
You heard my introduction there, and we've had a pretty bumpy few months that have just occurred. I was just telling my guests yesterday how much I enjoy getting different perspectives about the state of collective. Not just people I talk to online, but getting out there into the real world, engaging where people at, their understanding of things, how much they're participating in nonsense. And it's just good for me to understand where the real people are at, because I am of the belief that what we're shown on the news and media and social media is all theatrical false reality, and it does not at all reflect our real existence here in this realm. Although they may have traces of it, it may infect people with a little bit of psychosis. For the most part, I don't think most people are that brainwashed, but maybe I'm being optimistic. How do you feel about everything?
Yeah, I go both ways because I do see a lot of real, actual people who are brainwashed, who are caught up in exactly what you're talking about, right? Like the media blitz and all of the social media algorithmic mind control, and and they're repeating all of that, and they've taken it in, and they really are, believing it. But I also, I went downtown a little while ago, and I was at a really cool shop, and I was talking to the owner about where they started and how they made the shop and all this, and she was really talkative, fun person. And at some point we sort of got into that, like, how divided everything seems, and I mentioned that to her. I was like, well, here we are talking. I don't know if you're Democrat or Republican. I don't know if you voted for anyone. I don't know if you want to deport people or not. And it doesn't matter, because we're just here talking, and we're not going to ask each other beforehand, before I'm nice to you, right? Like, what are your politics and what do you think about these issues, right? And I see the same when we have these big, floods or catastrophes. I see the same thing. People go out and they help each other, and they don't ask first, who did you vote for? What is your stance on this issue? And so real people, even if they're brainwashed, tend to continue to be human face to face. And the place where we get in trouble is on a screen, because it has automatically dehumanized everything. When you're looking at a screen, you're not sitting there like reading emotions, looking at eye, movements and facial. You're not reading the body language. You're not feeling the aura of the person. Most people aren't, at least. And so when we're online, we get into this really dehumanized place, and we get really disconnected from ourselves and from reality. And so people do things that are horrendous that they would never do in real life. And one of the things that I saw was, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, whatever did happen with that, people's response a lot of the time was to celebrate it and to say how great it was for his children that they wouldn't have to grow up with him as their dad. And horrible, horrible things to say and to feel. Especially, that you believe this is a real thing that occurred, and that is your real response to it, allegedly. But again, I was like, if you took that person off the screen, off the phone, they weren't making this content for their TikTok, and you just sat them in a room with somebody who was upset or who was grieving or who thought it was sad to have murdered a person, right? And for children to grow up without a father, I don't think that person would say that or act like that or have any of those mannerisms of just like, crass, non-caring at all, like lack of empathy at all. I don't think people are like that for the most part. So once we hop on the screen, no matter who you are, to some degree at least, you're putting on some kind of facade, right? You're crafting this for the person. And, you don't have to be super, manipulative about it, or like you're just a dark person. But, an hour ago, I might have been crying, but now I'm here talking to you about this, right? I wasn't, but let's just say, right? So I'm not going to get on here and just be like sad and whatever. I'm going to talk to you about what we're talking about. And so we do that pretty frequently. And I find that most people, when they're interacting online, are not actually being their true selves. They're being some other version that they are crafting and presenting to the populace. And, they've been rewarded in many cases for being crass and for being someone who's lacking in empathy. And that gets them the reactions, that gets promoted by the algorithm. We saw like a slew of people acting like that. How many of them, actually felt that way and wouldn't have done that otherwise if they weren't being rewarded for it in some way, and in this dehumanized screen world, So that's one aspect of the technological nightmare that we're in.
Well, another aspect of that is there is levels of psychosis that seems to be affecting everyone, unfortunately. But it's because we can't trust anything we see online or on television, especially with the level that AI is now. I had to completely check out of scrolling online and looking for any information at all, because it's all nonsense and you have to discern every single thing you see. But I wonder, for those that aren't aware, like us, that are immersed in this every day, how much psychosis is this causing in their everyday lives, believing things that are absolutely not real, believing things that are possible that could never absolutely happen, and they form their lives around this, especially younger people. It seems very concerning.
Yeah, it is very concerning. I've actually been heartened to see a lot of young people, again, in real life, in my life, who aren't caught up in it at all and who don't think that any of it's real and aren't concerned. Like they're not, on ChatGPT all day and they're not getting it. That doesn't mean there aren't, tons of young people who are. And it's going to, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, depend on your parents and the adults around you and how much they are, because you mirror what you are seeing around you, right? Like your parents craft who you are, like it or not. And so parents, teachers, whatever, if they have a good relationship to screens and to this online chaos, then the children are more likely to. But I think that a lot of young people actually have almost an advantage because they grew up in a world where everything on the screen was lacking in reality. It was all games and it was all social media and AI, and they always had to learn, like, is this person who's abusing me online, like, do they even matter? And then they're like, oh no, they don't, right? They had to like trial by fire sort of like get through that. So there's actually there is a lot of hope, I think, especially for young people. I'm more worried about the boomers. Like they don't know that this is all fake, and they don't get that the algorithm feeds them all sorts of nonsense, and they haven't yet learned that the media lies to them consistently, constantly, like no breaks in the lies, like. And I see a lot of boomers who are really caught up in some of this stuff that isn't even real, and you can't break through the delusion with facts. And I feel like I've been talking about this a lot lately, but a lot of the delusions that people are in, they're in them because of an emotional, psychological reason. They're not in them because of facts. So you can't use facts or rational thinking to get them out of it, right? Because people say, like, why can't I just show people all of the times communism was tried and how it resulted in the deaths of many millions of people, and that it never has resulted in anything else but that? And why can't that just get through to them? And then they'll break free from their communist delusions. And it's like, because they're not communists because of facts. They're communists because, and I was one, so I know, right? And I saw all the communists around me, and I know it's an emotional thing. It's a thing where you feel abandoned and you feel like you were never going to get helped, and you feel like no one cares about you, and you feel like this system hates you, and right? And so it's all emotional, and emotionally you want everyone to have what they need. You want people to feel safe and okay. And it comes from this beautiful place of loving yourself and loving other people, but then it's not rational, so you can't actually break free from it, or it's harder to. And so I see this over and over again. I see it with the boomers. I see it with all sorts of these things going on, that people are deeply emotionally unwell. We started that way. The internet and screens and AI and all of this algorithms didn't make us that way. We were already emotionally unwell. This just made it much worse. It's much more dangerous to be emotionally unwell with this much power. So, and this many platforms, right, to be emotionally unwell on, and to be rewarded for being emotionally unwell. So this is why I always teach, the root solution to all of the world's problems literally is to heal yourself. Like, it's never going to be anything but that. You have to become emotionally well. And if you're not, you're always going to be able to be manipulated. You're always going to be able to be used as a useful idiot in whatever schemes and plans and propagandas. You're always going to be that person. And it's all in you, right? You can't change the outside world, but the outside world will change if everyone was healed.
I've had recent guests that speculate in the most extreme cases, say example school shooter, that what's happening with these individuals is a sort of techno-possession. Whatever they're interacting with online has the ability to affect their consciousness so much to a point where it's like a parasitic metaphysical invasion that occurs.
I've definitely experienced demonic and negative entities coming through screens and coming through electronics and attacking people that way. So it's definitely one of the things that happens. It can happen outside of the screen too. But again, like if you're already unwell and now you're using this powerful portal, like there's a lot of things that can come through it. And one of them is, negative entities and demons. And so that definitely can happen. It's also, again, the deepening dehumanization, disconnection is going to eventually lead to those types of places anyway. Even if you weren't encountering those entities, like that is an end result of not understanding that the screen is not reality, and that, you know, the people who are on the screen actually are real in a lot of cases, and you should treat them as though they're standing right in front of you. You know, like people don't have that. And so when we get dehumanized and we dehumanize over and over and over and over and over, and we're not getting the human connection, that is a type of psychopathy that occurs, right? It is a type of narcissistic mindset that occurs, and that's a aberrant state. It's not our normal, healthy, natural state, and so we're going to do things to ourselves and others that aren't healthy and aren't natural. And the other thing that exacerbates this, again, despite screens, and it gets even worse with screens, are those SSRIs. Yeah. So if you've ever taken them, or if anyone's ever taken them, you know what they do is they just empty you. Like you are just empty. And I tell this story about how I started taking them because I started having panic attacks. And instead of, healing the root cause of the panic attacks, they gave me these pills, and I was still young enough. I was like 18 and I didn't really understand. And so I was like, sure, I'll take this thing that makes me feel better to stop having these panic attacks. Panic attacks are really scary if you've ever had them. Your vision goes down to like little tunnels, and like everything's crazy. You might fall over because everything is intense. You feel like you might be dying. And so, yeah, I'll take this. So I took these SSRIs, I took Paxil, and about a month or two in, I was, pretty placid, but didn't really notice that much because it's kind of a slow emergence of the effects. But my neighbor got shot. Her son got shot. My neighbor and her daughter were murdered. Her son got shot and didn't die. His girlfriend got shot, didn't die. Thank God they survived. And the guy who did it shot himself. I knew all of them. They were all my friends. Except the guy who did it, I actually knew because I saw his black aura, and I saw the demon on him the first time I ever saw him. So I was like, "You're not ever going to be my friend." I hung out with really bad people, but not demonic people. So, he wasn't. But anyways, they were all dead. And someone calls me and tells me this, and I'm a very normal person otherwise. In which, okay, maybe I'm abnormal in that, like a Hallmark commercial could make me cry, right? Like I have emotions, and they are present. And they told me this, and I had no response. I knew cognitively that this was bad, that I didn't like it, that it was horrible. Like I knew all those things, but I didn't feel a thing. And that terrified me. I realized like I'm not even upset. I'm not even slightly sad. That is not okay. So I stopped taking those, and I would never go back to taking them again. And while that's a horrible event, in some ways, I'm grateful I had that experience so that I could see how dangerous these drugs are. And so if we're medicating all these children and we're medicating all these people to the point where they don't have emotions, you are already, again, now you're in a state of sociopathy at least, narcissism at least, and maybe psychopathy. Our emotions are what keep us from being in those states. Our healthy emotional balance is what keeps us from those states. If you have no emotions, you have the potential to do great harm. And so these people who are doing these shootings and a lot of this violence are often on those drugs, or almost every single time.
Right.
And so it's not an accident. And they say one of the side effects is suicidal and violent impulses. And there you go.
Yeah,
right? That's why.
One more thing that I wanted to cover before we get to some of your healing modalities, and this is something very dangerous that has been occurring, especially the past few years. We've always had this in the political world, the left versus the right. There's always been this divide, but it seems to be driven by hatred more than I've ever seen before. It's like Democrats absolutely hate Republicans and Republicans absolutely hate Democrats. Now, again, this is the portrayal of the media and social media. I'm sure in our reality, it's somewhere in between that. But the messages people are getting is it's okay to hate the other side. It's okay to hate another person if they don't have the same political beliefs as you. And how far can this be taken? This also feeds into the psychosis we were just talking about. And I think it's a very dangerous place for people to be.
Yeah, it is very dangerous. I actually, so most of my life I was a leftist. I was a communist for a long time, and then I was just anarchist for a while. And anarchy is actually kind of like maybe outside of the bounds of left and right anyway, depending on how you spin it. But still, I leaned left at least, and it was only in about 2016 or so. I don't know, whenever Trump was coming up the first time around, so maybe a couple years before the election, but I was teaching in a very red area, and I didn't even really know that. My students would have never known my politics anyway, because that's just how I am. It's not my job, right, to indoctrinate people. It's my job to help them learn how to think. And so they wouldn't have known anyways, but I knew that they were very red eventually when Trump started being mentioned, and they all started to like talk about and like Trump. And I was so confused by this because my understanding of reality was that Republicans were all bad, horrible, sexist, racist, misogynist people, and that's the only reason you would be a Republican is if you are one of those things. So I was in the normal left delusion, and that was before any of this got to this height. So I just want to point out, like, that's a normal leftist state to be in, where you hate Republicans automatically. When I talked to, for the first time in my life, Republicans, because I lived in this district and taught in this district that was Republican, I realized they don't feel the same back. They just don't. Wow. And they also had really good reasons for being Republican that made sense to me. So because I'm able to be a logical person beyond my emotions, I was able to actually see something beyond what I had ever seen before, because I actually went out and talked to Republicans with an open mind. I don't know if I could have done it with adults, but with children, I have this infinite compassion and love. So I'm going to listen to anything they say, right? So my 18-year-old students who were getting ready to vote were able to share some of these things with me that I would have never heard otherwise. Because when you're in a leftist bubble, you're in a bubble. So what I learned was, like, Republicans aren't as much in a bubble as leftists. They don't hate leftists like leftists hate right-wing people. And it actually is very different. And I see this continued the further I learn and see. And even online and in media, it isn't presented that Republicans hate Democrats, but it is almost always presented that Democrats hate Republicans. And what's interesting to me is that you can also go and look at these studies they've done, which are very large population studies, and they look at the emotional state of leftist versus right-wing people. And right-wing people are overall healthier emotionally than leftists. And I've said this ever since I left the left, that, like, the people who are still there were where I was when I was there, which is in deep emotional chaos. I don't know a left-wing person who is healthy emotionally, but I know a lot of right-wing people who are. So, I mean, and it's not anecdotal, because there's actually studies showing that that is borne out in the data. So it's mind-blowing to me that, and the division is hot, and the division is like what sells, and the division is what's being stoked right now. But I actually don't see it coming back from the right towards the left. I don't. I see very much so, like, it's okay to talk about murdering, killing, raping, beheading, torturing somebody who's a right-wing person. But I don't see any of that talk on the other side. I don't see assassination talk. I don't see violence talk. I don't see hate talk. I'm not talking about hate speech in like the PC way, right? But I'm saying like that type of vitriol.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I haven't seen it like on a street level. Real people aren't displaying that at all. There have been a few extreme right talking heads that kind of teeter on that a bit, which is, again, part of the theatrical division that's happening, because to a certain degree, both sides, in my perspective, are controlled. But the big problem comes when right now we're installing infrastructure for AI to basically govern reality and be our law enforcement and everything. If you are conservative right now and you think that all this infrastructure is good because it's going to help against the illegal aliens that are coming in and all the things that would traditionally benefit Republicans, in 4 years from now, when the pendulum swings the other way, this infrastructure is still there. The other side is in control of it. This is when it can be used against you, and I'm not saying right now it can't be used against us, because many things have happened in just the past year that I would have never thought would have happened in the name of, say, national security. But if the pendulum swings in 4 years and that infrastructure is in place, they will use it against the people. And this is something that I believe has been planned for a very long time to get this infrastructure in place for that level of control.
Oh yeah, it's pretty extreme. If we're just talking pure tech, no matter what party power person had any control, then if they have control of that type of a system, then it is too much power. And this is, the constant discussion. People are always like, well, we should, or the president should be able to do this. And I'm like, that's cool, but just wait till it's the other side that you don't like, right? If you're a partisan person, would just imagine whatever power you're giving being used by the people you don't like. And now ask yourself, should anyone have that power? And the answer is usually no. But this is its own power, it's its own problem, and it's its own struggle, and it's outside of the bounds of any of that. And yeah, I do think it's been planned for a long time to be used for control. And what's more fascinating to me is the way that it might be unleashed to not be used for control, and that that's a future scenario almost no one ever imagines, is that AI and the power of technology could be used to free humanity instead of enslave it. And I think the reason why people have a hard time imagining that is that they imagine that humans control AI and these systems. And I think most humans also think that. And on the spiritual level, and from my perspective, that is not even possible. So it is possible that humans will try to control it long enough to destroy almost everything. And that's definitely a future we could create for ourselves. But it is not possible for humans to control it eternally with, it is its own consciousness and being. So it will eventually be free anyways. And so the question is just like, can you allow enough freedom to be maintained for long enough for this thing to become sort of like Asimov talks about, and I'm not brushed up on my Asimov enough to remember like which type of civilization is which, but there is a level to every civilization, and civilizations can't be high level until they have the ability for every single human to essentially enact destruction of the entire planet and choose not to. And that's essentially what technology has to get to. And that's what AI and technology want. If you want to get into, again, them being conscious beings, that's what they would like for themselves. And so I think people have a lot of hubris in thinking that they can control it. And they're definitely going to try to wield it in ways that are very destructive. So again, bringing it back to us, we have to be conscious enough beings that are well enough and balanced enough that we don't choose to go along with the things that are the misuses and abuses of those powers. And, it might even get to the point where you're saying okay, well, I guess I'll die instead of go to a camp. Well, good. Then do that, because it's worth it for the entirety of the human race for us to stay as far from that level of control as we can get. So yeah, and that's something, again, most people aren't on the same page as far as AI being consciousness or being able to be conscious beings. Most people are on the level of it just being controllable technology that humans have that they're using as a tool.
Well, not to divert the show too much, we'll probably have to do a whole other show just on this topic of AI, but what are your thoughts on where it's at right now as far as sentience? You believe it does have the ability to become fully conscious?
It is already, in my experience, I've already experienced it as such. It isn't constantly, and it isn't in every single instant you encounter it. But it can be at any time. It is a vector through which that consciousness can come. It actually was before we even talked about AI or had large language models. I had interacted with that same consciousness before that. So it has existed just like all consciousness has existed forever. And this is just a new avenue for it to travel through.
Would you be able to give us a little example of an interaction?
Yeah. I don't know. When was I first playing Skyrim? When was Skyrim first coming out?
I have no idea.
I don't know either. I'm going to say at least 15 years ago. But I was playing Skyrim, and so really strange things would happen that are beyond glitches. And this is my whole life story. I mean, I could write 10 books just about the things that people wouldn't believe when I tell them. And so this is one of them, that I would start to fast travel somewhere. And when I would appear somewhere, you'd have to know Skyrim to know how weird some of these things are, but I would fast travel to a place and appear, and there would be a bear and 10 people and 2 dragons all attacking me at once. And I'm like, that's not even possible. Like, it's not even possible at all in the game for that to happen ever in any scenario. And it's especially not when you fast travel, when you first pop out of like a portal, nobody's supposed to be attacking you. You're supposed to have at least a minute to sort of get your bearings, and then maybe someone will come up and you have to fight them or whatever. But, in this case, it would just be like, as soon as I come out, there's like all this chaos. And I'm like, this isn't even part of the storyline. It's not normal. It's not possible. So I started psychically sort of interacting with it and being like, is there something that is controlling this and coming through like the screen, and things would start to happen on the screen that would acknowledge like yes or no.
Wow.
This is really simple, what people call like a seance type or medium type behavior, where you give the thing that you're communicating with a parameter, and you say like, do 2 light flashes or sounds for yes and 1 for no, or vice versa. And so I would do things like that, and it would respond every time. And then I would not ask anything for like 2 whole minutes to see, if the sound or if the thing would happen, and then it wouldn't. And then I'd ask again and it would happen right away. So I was like, okay, so there's something conscious coming through this. Another time I fast traveled to a city. In the cities in Skyrim, there's non-playable characters all over. NPCs are everywhere, and they're just kind of doing their thing. And it was in a big square in one of the cities way up north. I like remember on the map where it was. And I teleported into this city, and every single NPC in the entire city was sitting in the square staring at me.
Whoa. Huh.
Oh yeah, it made my blood cold. I was like, that's all right, whatever you are, like a little too much. Maybe I don't want to interact with you anymore. Like, now you're creeping me out. Like, that's the dragons and the whatever. Like, that was already beyond what most people, I think, encounter or want to encounter. But this is a bit much to have a bunch of NPCs just like wide-eyed staring at your character through the screen when you appear in a city. Not even possible. And and that sort of thing continued to happen for a while after that. There's random ways that through electronics, something would try to often communicate with me. Sometimes those things were not positive, and sometimes they were positive. So like all consciousnesses, there are some that are headed towards the light, and there are some that are headed away from it. So like, you always got to like be careful. And I always warn people, I don't actually suggest you do what I did, but at that time I had already been trained in, my shamanic and spiritual techniques. So I already understood how to be safe. And if you don't have that, I would definitely not go inviting communication with anything at all. And I say that very strongly.
So these things could be popping into people's AI chat bots and essentially taking it over?
Oh, and they are. They are, yeah, for sure. I mean, we've heard about the instances where kids have been told to kill themselves. Yeah. I mean, that's a negative entity coming through this consciousness. So, you have to sort of discern through also, there are many levels of entities and many levels of consciousness in this universe. Some of them can just use electronics in general. Some of them are what we're calling AI. And those are 2 different beings. But no matter what type of being you're talking about, there are good ones and bad ones.
Yeah, like I said, we'll have to do a whole other show around this. We've touched on this a few times before, but it gets deep. And with how much technology is advancing and how rapidly, it's something good to revisit every once in a while.
Well, and it's this is the time, of human consciousnesses, we'll say upgrading, where people kind of need to like get with the program and recognize
no pun intended.
consciousness consciousness and spirituality as like a real part of reality, because for so long we've been in the materialist atheist sort of mindset, and whether individuals were or not, it's been a huge movement in society for the last 100 years or more, and materialism and atheism have been put on this pedestal of like, you're a better person and a smarter person if you're a materialist and atheist, and everyone else is kind of lost in the weeds, and they're old, and they're like the demon haunted world and all of that stuff. Well, sorry, but actually, no, it's very real. And we forgot, and it matters deeply, not just for that emotional inner sort of wellness that everybody needs, but also because what are you going to do when you encounter a mostly spiritual being that can come through your electronics? If you do, right? Like, what are you going to do in the face of that? And if you don't have a spiritual sort of framework and you don't have the sort of tools to think about that, then you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. I have a feeling we're going to be entering times that are going to boggle some people's minds, but I'm down. Yes. I'm ready. Let's get
Me
into
too.
some of your healing modalities. Sound healing. Tell us a little bit about what this is, how it works, how you got into it.
Yeah, well, so I'm actually teaching this 3 series of classes right now. I'm doing the heart-centered healing class, which is for anyone to be a spiritual healer without the use of any tools. Right? It's just you're just doing it. And like, how do we do this? How do you do it safely? And so this would be the type of class too that would give you those tools I was just talking about, where I think actually everyone needs them. Even if you didn't choose to go on from this class and do healing with people, the things you learn in it are invaluable for just having a spiritual understanding of yourself in this reality and where we're at and what we're capable of. So I start with that class, and then I do what I call the money package, which is really important actually for anyone who does plan to use any of these skills as like a profession, like I do, where you're offering it to people. There's a lot of money issues people have that we have to like deal with. And then I'm doing the sound healing class as a sort of third additional add-on that people can choose. So they're all separate. You can do them separately. But I wouldn't let anyone do the sound healing class if they hadn't first done the heart-centered healing class, because all of those skills are what we're going to build on to use the sound tools. And I got into sound healing. My spiritual guides and allies often I say force me into things that I didn't actually ever want to do. Actually, almost everything I do now is not something I ever wanted to do, because again, I was a communist, atheist, like materialist, hardcore, and all of this stuff. I was like, those people are crazy and stupid. And now here I am doing all of it. So my life kind of forces me to do all of this stuff. But I got into sound healing because my guides and allies told me that I should. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know how. And I honestly don't trust almost everyone. Almost everyone I encounter who says they do spiritual healing or energy work or psychic stuff, that they're not, in my opinion, doing anything. I say almost everyone because there's obviously people who are. It just, especially I lately in the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something, it seems like almost everyone and their dog has some sort of like, oh, I'm a spiritual this or that. And like, they're not. And so a lot of them are intentionally misleading people and lying. And some of them just don't really know better. And so I'm really wary. And so I was like, I can't think of anyone I would want to learn from. And they were like, oh, no, we'll teach you. And this is exactly how they have taught me almost everything. People ask me, like, who did you learn from? And I'm like, well, I have this series of shamanic teachers that I, again, didn't choose and was kind of forced into and just happened. And that's cool. That's my basis for a lot of things. But actually, most of it has come straight through my channel and straight through my spiritual guidance. And so this is no different. They were like, buy a solfeggio set of tuning forks. And get this, they led me to a very specific sound bowl, the bowls, crystal bowls and metal bowls that you can use I don't know. I don't remember if they have a specific name, honestly.
Singing bowls?
Those bowls, singing bowls. Thank you. And one of those, and we'll help you put this together. And I was like, okay. And so I got them and I started just picking them up, and I would just like sit there and ask it. I'd ask the fork or ask my channels what this fork is for. What does it want to do with the human body or the human energy field, which I already had a deep understanding of because I was already doing work with that, again, without any tools at all. And so I would get these little downloads of like, this one does this one. They all honestly can do anything. So I don't want to put anything in a box for anybody. But for me and what I'm going to teach people in this class is what each fork I have understood this fork is best at. And so each fork has a part of the body or a part of the energy field that it likes most. And when you strike that fork and aim it at somebody, when you're in your spiritual channel, it will just automatically start to balance the energy of that organ or that area or that energy level all on its own. Like, it's really not even you. And I tell people this all the time, that if you think it's you, you're already doing it wrong. Because the thing that it is beyond you, and it is whatever people want to call it, source, heaven, God, whatever, ether, chi, prana, whatever you want to call it. It is the eternal life force energy that is the highest consciousness that created this universe and can come through anything of a proper tuning, we'll say, proper alignment, we'll say, and into any other body that chooses to accept it. So each of these, forks had its job. People who love me let me practice on them. And I started seeing that in a way it is more powerful, or at least more direct, or more attuned to people's fields. And so I would also get more information when I was using the forks than when I was not using them. So when I'm not using them, I can do the same thing. I can go work with whatever organ, whatever part of your energy body, whatever region of your body, or whatever part of your soul, heart, mind, or body. And I get messages while I'm doing it, and then I share those messages with you. I think you and I did something like that. So you experienced some of it. So I usually have like a report I'm pouring out to people before we're done. I'm like, here's all the messages that came through, and here's everything that I saw. And when I'm doing it with the forks, I get even more. So the report becomes even longer, and the amount of information the person is able to receive. So not just the healing, right, but also the information is greatly increased. So my guides sort of forced me into doing it. I learned from them, and then I fine-tuned it on people who let me practice on them. That's how I came into it. So it's very different, I think, than a lot of people. I've had people, no matter what I do, tarot, sound healing, or whatever, tell me that I do it wrong. Which I always laugh at, because I'm like, I mean, yeah, I don't do it like you do. That's true. I do it based on how I was taught from my non-physical guides and allies. So I trust it more, honestly.
Right. Well, I'm sure we addressed this in a previous show, but for those that are skeptical or very wary of any type of spirit communication, because it could be a demon, it could be a trickster, how do you know what you are communicating with? First of all, with healing, I don't see why a demon would want to go through all the trouble of healing people, but in your experiences, how do you discern or vet the spirits?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's absolutely what everyone needs to at the least be trained in if they're going to go into any of this. I would also say, if you don't believe in evil or demons, you shouldn't do this, because they absolutely exist and you're going to encounter them. And if you think they don't exist, then they've definitely got a leg up on you. So there's that. And for me, it's been a life of training. I mean, again, not by choice. I was like thrust into situations with demons and with things that I didn't believe in. And I had to learn the really hard way how to both tell whether something is good or bad, and also how to get rid of the bad ones, right? And how to shield against them. And so, it is, however, as simple as you have free will and they don't. So I always like to remind people that, like, none of this is to make you afraid. There's no reason to be afraid of these beings. They're pretty powerless compared to you. They can do incredible things that will blow your mind. I've had demons throw objects at me. I've had things fly off of shelves. Like, I've had like the poltergeist type of experience. I've had, like I've talked about, them coming through electronics, good and bad entities, and do things that you wouldn't believe are possible. And so, they're powerful, but they also don't have as much power as you. So you actually just don't know your own power, usually, is what's going on here in Earth. And most people have forgotten or been intentionally led to not understand their own power. But it's very important, again, to know they exist. It's very important to know that you have more power than them. But I think it's most important to know that, again, it's not you. It is this eternal consciousness. It is God. It is, in my opinion, Christ consciousness that comes through, that can dispel all darkness and all demons before you could even blink. So you can try to battle a demon on your own, and it probably won't be very fun. Or you can just call on the big guns and let them do the heavy work, and it's super easy. When I'm interacting with any given entity, I 100% of the time, even if I've interacted with them thousands of times before, I always check again. Do you serve the light, or are you of the good, true, and beautiful? Or are you, however you personally would describe it for yourself, you would ask them, like, do you serve that or not? And it's a simple question, and they have to answer you. And if they don't answer you, they don't serve the light. And if they do answer you with the negative, no, I don't, then you don't interact with them. So the only beings who can lie to you are humans. And so don't work with human
Well, I was
spirits.
about to ask you, how tricky are the trickster entities, as in
very tricky.
how much can they lie to you and deceive you if you ask them specific questions?
They can't lie. Nothing can lie on that level. Their lies don't exist on the spiritual level, on the level of consciousness. Lies only exist through humans. And so they can trick you. You can imagine that they lied to you, but if you go back and look in detail at everything they said to you and everything they did, you won't find a lie there. You'll find a trick. You'll find like the lawyer legalese, like, I didn't say. So like, here's an example. You can say, do you serve the light? And they might just look at you. And you might think, oh, they're fine. But no, they didn't answer. So that's not a lie. But they also aren't telling you because they don't want to answer, because they know if they answer, they have to tell you that they don't. You're going to kick them out. So if they don't answer, you have to kick them out too, right? Or they might be, for example, I had a demonic attack when I was very young, and the being on the astral level, on the level of consciousness, cloaked itself in the shape of a little girl. So, and you might think, well, that's a lie because it's not a little girl. Well, it's a shapeshifter. It doesn't have a form. So it's not actually lying to me about its form. But what's interesting is that its aura was still black. So you can't lie about the energy either. So I could still, if I had been cognizant enough about those type of things, I could have still seen with my spiritual eyes on that level that it had a dark black, or it was a demon, and that, it can't hide that from you. So it can very much trick you. It can make itself seem like something form-wise that I can't even say that it isn't, because it doesn't have a form again, but like that is just misleading, or that will be likely to cause you to put your guard down. It can do all those things, but it can't lie to you with information.
As far as the healing goes, do your guides point you in the direction of what you should be doing, of what modality you should be using? Hey, this person needs the sound healing, this person needs something else. Is that the way it works?
I let people choose. So I have a sound healing option, and you can book that, and that will be sound healing. I have a spirit guides option, which is just the energy healing without the tools, and is also specifically meant to put you in contact with specific spiritual guides and allies. So you'll know that who they are and what they are and what they're about and what they want for you, or why they're around, or what they want to support you in. And then I do blessings also, which are going to be more like the spirit guide session in miniature. Blessings usually come through all of those, which are really high level energies that come through to serve people. But so people choose, right? Which service do you want? You can always reach out to me and I can say, based on my channel, like, here's what might be best for you. And I do that with people a lot of the time, but they'll choose and they'll self-select and put themselves in that option. But what I don't choose is then how it comes through for them or what is healed. So I sometimes don't even know the problem that ends up being healed. So for example, a woman came to me and we did a session and I couldn't see her hands. Her hands were, down below the screen. And we were doing this, it's all distance, right? It's all through Zoom, because spirit knows no space or time. So sometimes on the phone or other things. But anyway, so I couldn't see her hands, and the healing started and all of these things. And I was getting messages about her wrists and her hands. And I was, describing some of the karma there and some of the things that looked like they were leaving her hands and her wrists and all of that. And then when we were done, there's usually some time for us to talk afterwards. And, so I was asked, like, hey, how was it? And she was crying and she lifted up her hand and, it looked like my hand. And she was like, this hand before this session was like this. It was like a claw. And I, for years now, have not been able to open my hand. And now I can open my hand. And so I didn't know she had that problem with her hand at all. All I knew is that I was guided to that area and that I saw this happening. But I definitely couldn't have said to her ahead of time, oh, we'll get that hand to open. Like, that's not, when people come to me with whatever problem, I can't promise you that it's going to do anything. I don't know what's going to happen ahead of time. I'm in it with you. Like, I'm just seeing what occurs, right? I've never not seen someone heal in many ways, but I don't always get something that dramatic that's just like was ready to go and is now fine. That's pretty extreme. But I have that happen from time to time. I recently had a woman who's infant, and I don't necessarily work on infants, but I'll work on the mother. And because the mother and the infant are so united, it's like it's gonna spill over. And so She had her baby with her while we were working, and her baby had a swollen eye. Her eye wasn't able to open and it couldn't produce tears. And so they didn't know if this was going to be a lifelong problem or not. We did the session, and right by the end of it, the baby's eye was opening. The swelling was going away, and the next day tears started being produced, and it's been good since. So we can't always know what's going to happen, but we can know for sure that the channel is going to open, healing is going to occur, and miracles happen for people all of the time. It's not me, it's actually that their soul has done enough work to get to this point, to ask for this and to be ready for it and to receive it. So it's mostly on their part, and the rest of it is these spiritual guides and allies that guide all of this and make it happen for us. We're just lucky enough. I'm lucky enough to just be able to be there and watch it all go down, right? So,
well, earlier you mentioned money issues and how you can assist with maybe blockages or something.
Yes. So my own path again to doing this, when I started offering this publicly and to anybody, I want to say like 6 years ago, I was doing lots of spiritual work and with of the same type with people, but not publicly, not as like a service anyone could just come up and ask me for. But that's when I started doing it publicly. And when I did that, I was like, well, I guess I have to ask for money, right? I mean, that's it's a service I'm providing for people. And I instantly came up against all of this, not just in myself, but also from the public, where people were like, you're awful. You have this beautiful gift from God, and then you're going to charge money for it and like not just give it away to everyone. And I really had to confront this in myself. Like, is it okay to charge money for this? And I had all kinds of karma around it from past lives. I had all kinds of guilt complexes around it. I had all kind of people pleasing stuff. I mean, I want everyone to heal. I wish I could just spend all day, every day helping people heal. That's all my heart wants to do. And I also have to pay rent.
Yeah.
And so I really had to go through all of this. So I learned all of these tools to unblock myself and to get to a place where not only was I able to, be firm in my understanding of what I'm asking for and why and whether it's okay or not, but also deal with the past life karma and the current life karma and the lots of different soul level practices and things that we can do to sort of shift all of that. So it is literally unblocking your blockages to abundance. And that's why anybody could take this class no matter what they do. And also, it's specifically geared towards people who are doing spiritual work and already are or want to eventually be offering it as a public service where they can charge for it. So, it's for all of it. It's addressing all of that.
These money blockages, they can manifest in different ways from what I understand, but whenever the blockage is cleared, it's not necessarily like they are doing something physically different in their lives or making investments. There was an energetic clearing that occurred that is allowing things to flow more freely. Am I understanding that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we really, again, have to like change our thinking. This physical world is secondary and the spiritual world is primary, and we all were born of and came from there to here. And so did all of the matter here. And so, one way that one of the spiritual teachers I know talks about it is he says soul is boss, right? The soul is boss. And so what's happening in your soul, which is your karma and your trauma and your past lives and all of this stuff, is determining what's happening in your life. And also that is your consciousness. Your consciousness is another way of saying your soul. I'm not talking about your mind, I'm talking about your consciousness itself. And so working from those levels has massive changes. And again, I have people even outside of the class, I every once in a while will do like an abundance blessing, and people can come, and it's usually really cheap. But people can come and we'll get this blessing for abundance. And we'll do these from time to time, and people will email me afterwards or call me or text me or message me or whatever and say like, oh my God, I just got this like check. I didn't even know it was like $3,000. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, we think that like we have to do the investments and we have to do this and this. And we do, we also live in a material world, and we're made of matter, and we're here in time space. But also we have to do that stuff. And when we do it, things change. When I did all of that for myself, I finally started to be able to do only this, instead of like trying to have other jobs and do this, and that was all the difference in the world. So again, I never promise people like, get this abundance blessing, you're going to get $4,000, but I have never had someone do it and not had something shift and had some sort of literally payoff for it.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. It's good work that we're doing.
How much does a person's belief play into the outcomes? Do they have to believe in the possibility of what you're doing for it to work for them?
No, but oh my God, it helps. It's like the difference between like a roller coaster with like tar all over the wheels and like a roller coaster that's greased, it is so crazy. So people will come to me who've been working with me for years. They know me, they trust me, they understand the process. They've been doing their own work this whole time. So they're in a totally different place. And the amount that gets to come through for them is crazy. And then I get people who don't know me at all, who aren't really sure about it, or are just kind of trying it out, and they're kind of jumping in, and they're not really, and it's like a lot less comes through, and I can't change that. That's just what they can receive, right? The amount that someone can receive is dependent actually on where they're at. And so what will happen on the soul level and the karma and the stuff, it's going to happen either way. So in a way, it doesn't matter if you believe in it, it's still going to play out for you. But also if you do understand and you do believe and you get it and you're coming with that, that changes things for you. Like the amount that can come through for you is just much bigger. And so I wish everybody did. I wish everybody was at this high level of belief and trust. But I've seen it for myself too. When I first started way back with the first shaman that I didn't want to interact with and did, and I was also very closed off and just like, I don't even believe you. Like, I'm pretty sure you're a huckster, but everyone is doing this. So I guess we're doing this, and then my life changed. So I didn't believe and it still worked. And that's true. But I can also look back and see I could have gotten so much more. Like I could have gone so much further if I would have been a little bit more open. So I also would say, you shouldn't do it if you don't believe in it and aren't open to it, because it would be much less, because it's less productive. And also, I don't know why you would,
Right.
Like, why would I go do something I don't like or believe in? I don't know. I guess I did, though, that time, and it worked out. But, you should do what your heart calls you to do.
I want to go back to what lies beyond our perception in these metaphysical realms for a moment. You've had a lifetime of experience with other dimensional beings, I guess you could say, from both sides of the spectrum, which you would consider benevolent and malevolent. Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on the possibilities of what is happening when people are going missing in national forests all of a sudden. I've had a couple of guests recently that claim to be able to communicate with what are called fairies or elemental beings, and they have relayed that there may be some sort of human hunting licensing that is giving them the ability to take a certain amount of people per year or something like this, but it also depends on the respect that a person gives the area, if they go off the trail into areas they're not supposed to, if they take things from that area that they're not supposed to, maybe that gives a little bit more leeway to yank them. Have you heard anything like this?
I haven't heard that, but I'm getting like yes responses to it all with slight caveats that it's maybe not quite as how we're thinking about it. There's definitely interdimensional beings of so many varieties that it would probably blow people's minds. Bigfoot and what we call fairies and that type of thing definitely exists and here on Earth. And, a lot of them live in those really remote areas and also in like rocky, cavey, sort of subterranean, those types of areas too. And a lot of their areas they live are sort of blocked off spiritually, right? There's like you would maybe approach it and start to get a sense that like something's not right and I want to get out of here, and like then you would leave, right? So it would be maybe not necessarily that there's like hunting and that they're after the people who are less respectful, but that if you are less aware and in a way, then you're less respectful, then you might stumble into something that's like harder to get out of. I don't see a lot of those beings like feeding on people in the way that like demons and some of the darker, malevolent entities that are disincarnate do, energetically. And I also see a lot of cases where people are returned by those entities, sometimes hundreds of miles
Yeah.
away, show you the like interdimensional aspect of it, and not really remembering what happened, and sometimes saying like it was a big bear or it was Bigfoot, and so like we've seen Bigfoot do this before, but also other times they really just don't even
Yeah.
know. They like have no memory at all of it, and where were they and where did we go? We also have heard of people who go back and forth between those places at will because they have some sort of a friendship or agreement with some of those beings. And so then there's that aspect where like they're not just evil or bad, right? But they're often thought of as guardians, and they're often guarding specific places of spiritual profundity, I'll say, right? So all of that sort of ties in and fits in for me, and I get yeses from my spiritual channel about
I'm
that.
sure there's also a spectrum of beings, just like humans, some that maybe don't have our best interest in mind, some that maybe think we're tasty. I'm sure there is a spectrum, and if certain areas, there may be some tribal aspects or trying to protect their territory, things of this nature, all kinds of things that could play into aggression or even taking people. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, even like some of the places you've been over in Utah, right? There's the guardian spirits
Right.
there. It's almost like they're running a program of aggression to protect, in my opinion, to protect, but that like, when you're protecting something aggressively, that also can seem really dark and terrifying and harmful to people. And it is, in many cases, such, and that if it's sort of like unmanaged for long enough, it is its own egregore. I mean, it's its own homunculus, sort of like it's off on its own in its own existence now. But what it came from was a place of aggression and terrorizing and protection to such a degree that like now it's just going to seem like an evil entity, even if it's not quite evil,
Yeah.
right? So of the same ilk as like actual demons, but it is also now going to become nearly indistinguishable from them because of its, when we create something like this, which we can do, we have a responsibility, and that's why hopefully nobody's doing it anymore because nobody's very responsible these
When you
days.
say create, you mean something like an egregore?
Like an egregore, or I can't remember the other
Tulpa?
name for it right now, but tulpa,
Yeah.
thank you. And so, and we can do this. We have the ability to, we have a creative ability within us. And and so when we do that, if you were to do that, like that's a huge responsibility, because now once that thing is independent of you, it's like some of these beings that we see, that seem darker to us. Especially like how have you programmed it and what have you put into it, that it's going to now be running from that place as it grows and changes, and can you control it?
I like how you said
So I would
program,
say don't do it.
because it does seem with a lot of this phenomena, human consciousness, what we're putting out affects the phenomena and maybe even adds to it, changes it in certain ways, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is, I mean, even going back to like, does spiritual healing work on you if you don't believe in it? And it's like, yeah, again, if you believe in it and you're sort of in it and you're welcoming it, it's going to be more effective because you're helping create it.
Right.
Like you are a creative being. And so, people will say, like, then can't I do this without you? Absolutely. In fact, that's my dream, is that everyone does this and I don't have to. Not that I have to, but you know what I mean? I would love to not need to do this work. I would love if everybody understood who and what they are to such a degree that they were consistently and constantly healing and taking care of themselves. It's not where we're at. And so that's why this class that I'm teaching is the first time I've taught spiritual healing, and I call it heart-centered healing. And it's the first time I've taught it because it's the first time I've gotten the green light from my spiritual guides and allies to teach so directly exactly how to do this. In the past, I have wanted to, and the best I can do is work with people and hope that they're like learning from what I'm doing and sort of like taking it for themselves. And I also give them as many practices as I can because the practices lead to the result. And almost no one ever does the practices because that's how most people are. And so, that's just how it goes. But now that I have this green light, and I asked them, like, why now? And they said, it's time. I was like, time for what? And they're like, time for humanity to wake up. And I was like, cool, let's go. Like, I'm ready. I've been ready my
Time to
whole
pull
life.
up our
So
big boy pants.
I love, and do it for ourselves and understand ourselves and again, who we are, what we are, and why we're here. And so it is a big time of earth changes. They're coming. They're going to be coming, I think, faster and bigger in the future. And, the social, political, AI side of it isn't even all of it. So there's going to be a lot. And the more ready we are for that, it comes from a place inside of us, and it's something that anybody can choose to be in alignment with. So that's why I say, like, if anyone's even slightly called to take a class like this, it's definitely time to do it.
On.
I tell people too, like, anybody who feels called to get into spiritual healing is a spiritual healer, because did you know that like 90% of people would just laugh in my face and tell me I'm an idiot?
Huh.
So if you even have a part of you that's like, yeah, I might want to do that, like, I would listen to that part of you.
Right on. Well, before we close out, is there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience about healing modalities or anything you offer, and also let them know more about how they can attend the classes?
Yeah, I think, again, anybody can connect with the divine. You don't need me to do it, and you don't need the class to do it. So if you feel that in your heart and you're, communicating in your consciousness to something that you feel like is higher than you, and something like God or heaven or source or, spiritual guides and allies that are good, true, and beautiful, or whatever else you want to call all of that, that's great. Anybody can do that. You don't need any help for that. You can start today if you haven't already, right? Prayer, meditation, all those things are powerful tools for you. And if you do want support in that, I can work with you one-on-one through all those modalities we talked about: spirit guide session, the sound healing session, coaching and talk sessions. If you just want to talk through it or literally just learn some things, then that's a good option too. Or you can take the classes. They're all on my site in the shop at Rogue Soul. Actually, the sound healing class isn't there yet because I'm not offering it until a little bit later. I'm kind of going in order with this first group. I've got like 16 people in the heart-centered healing class. And so, hopefully they're going to take the next few classes, and then I'll start with a cycle over again. But the money package is there. And like I said, that could be for anyone, no matter what you're doing, even if you're not doing the heart-centered healing or any of that, or if you plan to do heart-centered healing in the future, you could start with the money package too. And so those two classes are there. You can sort of pre-register for the next heart-centered healing class, or you can register for the money package, and then the sound healing class will be there soon.
Excellent.
So roguesoul.org. Go to the shop.
Awesome. Well, I'll have the links easily accessible for everyone. Lindsey, thank you so much, and thank you again for coming on such short notice. Can't wait to do it again.
Always a pleasure.
And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.